Hello and welcome back for another episode on Easy 8 Online Painting Club. It has been such a week since the last time that I was online, live streaming from the depths of the cold room in my house. We have had exceptional response, so if you were here on the last show, thank you very much for being a part of it. I have been hyped all week. I've had nothing but positive responses. It has been an exceptional amount of feedback and response, so thank you very much. It's made it all worthwhile. So there's been a couple of improvements since the last week. I was actually able to sit back and review the video, and it was very, very raw, so there was a lot that could potentially go wrong, and I've made a few technical adjustments, and hopefully you might see those today. I have a fill light here to my side, so I'm not wreathed in so much shadow today. My remote is working, so I should be able to access things a little bit easier. And just generally got a few things kind of set out on the table. I'm always open to feedback, so if there's something that you find distracting or not good enough, then please drop in the comments, let me know. I know, for example, I've got shadows across the front of my face now, but it's just because of the very humble setup that I've got. My table is literally a piece of chipboard draped across two chairs, and I'm sat on a bench which doesn't actually fit down properly. And I've got some lights that just about do the job. I'm aware that my webcam right here for looking down, for example, focuses in and focuses out, and the zoom isn't as good as it could be, which is a shame because it's a really, really good and very expensive webcam. It's a Logitech C90, I think, the best thing that I could find for just standard webcam, but until I got a bit of money and this shows up and running smoothly, I'm not going to invest in something like a DLSR, which it would solve all my problems. So for those moments when we're looking at the work that I'm doing and I'm kind of trying to show off the stuff that I've got on the table and the zoom isn't so great and it kind of flits in and out, I can only apologize for that. It is something that I'm very aware of, and it is probably my number one go-to to fix straight away as soon as I get the money to be able to invest in something like that, which is strange because I thought it was going to be the audio. In the tests, my audio was coming across really tinny, but in a review, actually, it does the job. It's humble, and that's what this is all about. So, further on review, it sounded like maybe last time I made a lot of promises that didn't come all the way through. So, like I'd said a lot of times, we'll come back to that in the future. I've got a lot of ideas and I want to share them all with you. I just don't want to kind of blow all my content in one go. I know all the promises that I made. I want to show you everything, but in good time. Good things come to those who wait. So I'm not going to be alone for this evening because there's also me, and there's also Kyle back with us this week. Say hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle. So I also understand that you've made a couple of technical adjustments since last week as well.
Yes, it's been quite, like I say, a big technical adjustment. Is I've moved the lamp closer to myself.
Wow, that is a technical achievement. How long did that take? Days?
I racked my brain over the week about things I could do, and it seems to have made a difference. I've got rid of the terrible headphones that made my head look like they were the wrong shape as well.
It was quite a malfunction moment right before we went live last week, which is why things didn't really start so well.
These ones out because they're only little fiddly ones, but they are better than what I was.
We got good audio. We got good audio coming through, and that's all that matters really. We can see you, we can hear you nice and loud and clear. So it's been a productive week. Kyle, I looked at the stats on the video, but just before we went live, and we're up to 91 views on last week's video. That is absolutely astounding. I thought we were going to have half a dozen to a dozen maximum. So that means people are engaging. Whether people are sticking around, I don't know. It is a lengthy show at 2 hours, but it's a painting club, man. And you don't just kind of go into a club for half an hour. This is supposed to be live company. As we're painting, you can be painting as well. So I understand you were poorly this week. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm slowly getting there.
Cool.
There. But it's been something to look forward to this week is to get on here, get some painting done. I got my stuff out. I've actually just whilst you were doing your intro, just doing a little bit of dry brushing.
Oh, fantastic! What have you been doing? What? Because last week you were doing something from Age of Sigmar, weren't you?
Yes, I'm sticking with it. Basically, what happened last week was I got too excited about what we were doing, wasn't really concentrating, and was just applying things too quickly, just out of the excitement of being on. So I've kind of taken everything back, realised have a bit more of a plan in place about what I'm going to do. So I'm going with a high elf mage again. It's in its separate pieces. It's a really nice model to paint. It comes in 3 pieces in almost layers. So
it's not like a multi-piece kit or anything like that.
It's only posable in one way, but the cape is separate. Then I've got the body and the robes to do, and then it's sort of face and arms and staff are separate. So it's quite easily workable. And that's the plan. I've
had very little to do with Age of Sigmar. To be fair, like I always liked the original fantasy game from Warhammer, and I never really had an awful lot to do with that as well. But I've had very little to do, even in comparison to that, with the Age of Sigmar kits. Are they all like that? Are they all just kind of pushed together just to kind of get people playing?
Honestly, don't know. From the stuff I've got, it's all pushed together.
Okay.
I think I don't. Again, you have to quote me. Don't quote me on this one. Anyone that plays Age of Sigmar out there, I know one of our friends, Dave, plays a lot. That there's some of the old kits are still in place by the look of it. Some of the old Warhammer Fantasy kits, and they're a bit more posable. But even a lot of the new 40k kits are looking a lot more kind of snap in place.
Yeah. It seems to be like releasing a lot of box sets again, just to kind of get people into the game. Perhaps like almost like an invitation set. Like here you go. You probably haven't done this before. Off you go.
Yeah. Kind of push I find it a bit of a shame because part of the I like is the modelling aspect.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's a part of the hobby, but I think there's opportunities there. It might just mean I've got to upskill myself a bit on a few more tools to actually change poses and things like that. So.
Sure. So since last week, I've been doing a little bit of work on what I started, because one of the other problems that, of course, I did last week was I just talked for such a long time. But it was like you say, it was the first week. It was an exciting thing to kind of get in. I had a lot that I wanted to kind of get out. And I talked for a long time. I'll tell you, before we started, I was actually quite concerned that I would not have enough to talk about, and it would just be me painting going. And I didn't want it to be that, so I was just talking. So I only did a little bit at the end. Oh, we've got someone who's come and joined us, Jeffrey Lacey. That's my dad. He says, "Oi, oi." Hello, Dad. Thank you very much for coming along to join us. I'm going to take us over to the workbench, Kyle.
Sweet.
So you can see what I've been doing, and that is, of course, I was doing all my spore mines last week. So I'll bring them all into view. I had them spread out because I was drinking my tea. I've got 20 spore mines here from the Tyranids army.
Ungodly amount. No one needs 20 spore mines. I haven't played against them. No one needs them. You don't need that many.
I like them. They're quite a hard miniature to get hold of unless you spend a fortune on other sets to kind of get them. So I got a lot of these through various different means. I got them through I had 3 myself from an old Biovore that I've got on the side here. I'll show you in a second. And the rest of them I got through eBay, and then a couple of others were given to me, and they were various states of quality. They've been pre-painted beforehand, so they're not like the premium model showcase thing that I'm going to have on the tabletop. So I'm not overly concerned about what they end up looking like. Oh, we've got someone else in, Adrian Dean. Certainly don't need that many. How many is the perfect amount? Like 1, or can I add
one
0?
Token one.
Can I add zeros to that? Marker. Because the whole point of the spore mine is that it's a part of the, I suppose, maybe I use this term right, preliminary bombardment. For a man who stammers sometimes, that's a very difficult sentence to get out. So the idea is that a hive fleet of these aliens rocks up in orbit of your planet as a space locust. And to make sure that there's no resistance on that planet, or little resistance, or that the initial stages are completely dealt with, they just basically, I suppose, they poop these out all over the planet in their billions, and the skies are supposed to go dark with spore mines, and they should obviously explode and do horrible, horrible things. I said last week we'd be talking about themes of war. Just literally dropping mines or bombs out of the sky, but they're living. They don't really have much of a brain, so to speak. They kind of just aimlessly float around in the winds or in the breezes or whatever. But if they detect nearby motion or sounds or whatever, they're kind of drawn to it. So on the tabletop, you can move these around. They don't just kind of randomly move around. Or can they? It's been a while since I've played them. I can't remember. But they can also charge into the enemy, and they are absolutely destructive. So it used to be that you would buy a Biovore miniature. A Biovore is the creature that literally shoots these across the landscape. And I've got one of the old models here. This one dates back to 3rd edition. Unfortunately, his leg broke because I wasn't really looking after him very well. They kind of shoot these out of a cannon on their back. They kind of create them and they can fire them off. So even when the initial bombardment of the planet is over, they can still bring these to the battlefield. And this creature would be sat at the back and would be blind lob-shotting them. So you can add more. So the original pack used to come, I don't know if it still does, this is an old model now, would come with 3 of them, and they were old metal, because this is an old metal miniature as well, and it would come with different types, and the old smaller ones. So here's one, for example. This one, I think this one is one of the ones I bought from someone on eBay, and it's kind of drifting across like it's moving across the floor. I don't think that the miniatures were ever made like that, and someone might have broken it and glued it down. There's a little bit of stuff down there. It looks like it might be, but I quite like the fact that they're all unique and they're all different and moving in their different ways. So there were 3 of them in total, and they were all different. So you've got this one here, which was supposed to be like an acid one. And then there's this one here that was supposed to be like a gas one, and then this one here is painted slightly different colours, because it's kind of got like I don't know if you can see so well. It's got like a fragmented, almost grenade-like feature on its surface, which is supposed to be like a carapace. And on my Tyranid army, if I show you this Hormigaunt, which is one of our little critters, they got a carapace which I've painted grey. So throughout the week, what I've been doing is I've just been trying to get ahead on it. Last week we saw these were all white. I just kind of sprayed them at the last minute, and I just managed to get a little bit of yellow paint on most of them. Since then, I've yellowed them all. I've put pink on the tentacles underneath, and I've also put a little bit of grey on all the carapaces, which I just finished off this afternoon. I was actually active on the Facebook page that we've got over at Easy 8 Online Painting Club, and I was talking to the members on that page about what colours worked well. And what I wanted to talk about today, and I know, Carl, you're actually quite hyped about this, because this is a discussion that you've been wanting to have for quite a while, is going into shades and washes and tinctures and things like that. Am I right thinking that?
Yeah, definitely. I've spoken to quite a few experienced painters, and I'll ask them some advice on what to do, and they go, "Oh, if you use this shade, it will mute out this colour, or it will bring out this colour when you apply it," and that is just over my head. I just tend to go over dark wash and hope for the best. So having a bit more technical knowledge on what shades to use with what colour, or what.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's only recently that, in the last couple of years, I've really been getting behind the sort of different washes that you can get, and I've got a selection of the ones that I use here. And I've got a little habit. I'm an impulse buyer, so I go into a Games Workshop or I go into a painting store. And I go, those look nice. I'll grab me some of those. And I walk out going, I don't know why I spent that money on these. I don't know if I'm ever going to use them.
That's how they get you.
It is, yeah, it is. However, it's an interesting discussion to have, because I've got a model which is called the Tyrannofex, and I got this one off of eBay thinking it was going to be much better quality than it was, and it wasn't, which is a bit of a shame. It's kind of taking up all my webcam space. This is a huge model, and it's what is known as a Biotitan. These things are like bunker-sized creatures. They're super destructive. They take up a lot of your points for when you're playing a game. But this particular gun, as you can see, is like the size of a stretched limo. Has won me games in the past. So what I've used this one for is kind of testing out colour schemes. When I realised what colour scheme I wanted to do with it, I kind of just started playing them down, putting them down and playing around with it. And you can see on here that I've just got this very, very haphazard colour scheme on the yellow. You can see there's like a mottled, rippled effect of brown on there, and that's because I did what I know now as a rookie move, which is just cover the whole surface in a wash. I've got several washes here. I've got Carabao Crimson, which is one that I've recently purchased. This has been a game changer in lots of different ways. I'll come back to that in a second. And I've got 2 brown ones. One is Agrax Earthshade. These are all names that are obviously unique to or exclusive to Games Workshop or Citadel. And I've got Seraphim Sepia. Now, we spoke about this last week, didn't we? Sepia or Sepia?
Yeah.
I like Sepia. I think Sepia is the way. That's just the name that I use. Now, you can see, I don't know if the quality of my lights and webcam really pick it up. Maybe you're really used to these colours as well. It's very difficult to see much of a difference in these. And I was talking to some people way back when, probably a couple of months ago now, on Facebook, on one of the groups that I follow on there. What really is the difference? I can see the difference in the bottle. Sepia is a much lighter, almost light soil kind of colour, as where Earthshade is much darker, much muddier kind of a colour. But when I apply them on a lot of the colours that I use, I can't really tell the difference. And a gentleman was telling me that if you're using really light colours, things like whites and certain ivories and things like that, then the sepia really starts to come out of its own, you know. So really, for what I'm doing on yellow, unless you've got a real eye for it and I'm using it in certain ways, I'm not really telling the difference. I started with Agrax Earthshade. I now use sepia. Whatever I've got to hand. I did lose this one for a while in one of my drawers, so whatever. And I basically just kind of was getting it on a really big brush, slapping it on and just kind of moving it around, which I thought at the time, in my amateurness, was a brilliant idea. What it does do, you can see on this model here, if I try and bring my light in real close, I was having a bit of a ticky light a minute ago, but it's working all right. You can kind of see a lot of random pooling and streaks, especially here. Does that really show up quite well? It's quite shaded. And there's tide marks at the bottom. And it can look awful. There's a little bit here. And as I was doing it on the smaller miniatures, it actually it did a lot of good for them. Because they're so small, it just picks out a lot of the detail. I probably didn't apply it so heavy, although it is in some places. And then I did dry brush these a little bit with the original base colour, not the highlighting colour, so it probably toned it down a little bit. But on this one here, you can see that it didn't do really what it should have done. It was a really, really amateur move, and I kind of want to move away from that. What a lot of Space Marine players do when they're trying to go for like a really clean sort of paint scheme is that they would kind of micromanage where they put it and get like a really, really thin brush. Where's my little thin brush here? And they would do pin lining, so they would go like, okay, so I want these little line things here on the side of this thigh, for example. They would get a small amount of that wash, and they would just kind of run it in where they want it to go, down the edges of the rims on shoulder pads, or in eye sockets, or under certain features to kind of enhance them, because it basically lends depth to it. So what I was doing was just washing the whole thing. Now,
you should mention that, actually, Danny, because that's exactly what I've just done. Just before we started talking, I picked up my Agrax Earthshade
and slapped it all over,
brush, and slapped it all over the cape. So I can let everyone know how it comes out.
Yeah, I'm not. That's not the saying. I was about to go on to say that it's not necessarily wrong. It depends on what you're trying to go for. I certainly on my Tyrannofex here, this big creature, have lost control of it, and you want to keep manipulating it. It takes a long time to dry. Not in this room, because normally this is a very cold room, but today, because it's been so cold and I was worried about paint not drying, I've had the radiator on. It is like the Mediterranean here at the moment. So you've got to kind of manipulate it around until it starts to dry a little bit. But because it's water, it's got a lot of water content to it, it's going to sit in droplets and bead up, and that's going to give you sort of tide marks, and you probably want to avoid that. It does depend on what you're doing. Now, I've got biological creatures. These aren't machines, or they're not wearing fashioned armor, so actually for me it's not that bad. But it does look like, especially on this thigh that I was just pointing out, it does look very amateur, and I'm a little bit ashamed of that, but it has its place. It has its place. Now, I was using I've got another one here called Drochi Violet. I like purples. I find it hard to kind of find a scheme to put them into. So you can see on this Tyrannofex model here, I'll bring it into shot properly, this Tyrannofex here has got lots of tentacles coming out from underneath it. This is because when I bought it, there were supposed to be spikes in the ribcage, or big spurs of bone or claws or something, and they weren't present as a part of the model. But it did have big gaping sockets, and it just looked really unnatural. Oh, hi, Luke's just joined us. Just quickly stopping by today. Hope you're both doing well. I'm doing fantastically. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming along. It's really nice to see some familiar names as well. Cheers. So where was I? This colour here was originally the same colour as this pink that I put on the tentacles. on the spore mines, but again I slapped a load of this violet wash on, and it's completely changed the colour of them. So what we're really experiencing here is almost a glaze, in the fact that I'm applying this colour, and it's distorting the base color underneath. So if you use it sparingly, like I was saying, in this kind of pin lining sort of fashion, then it's only going to affect that very, very small area you put it into, and it's just basically going to give you like an outline, really, a defining area. One that's commonly used is Nuln Oil, which is black. This is really good for like doing metals and things like that. So glazes are what you would normally do to affect the whole colour underneath, from what I've learned. So you can use shades and washes in whatever way you really want. These are called shades. They used to be called in Games Workshop, or the Citadel range of paints, they used to be called washes. When I was growing up, and I got into Airfix models and my dad was making stuff, we just called them inks, but I think ink is the wrong term, because I think an ink is different from a paint. I don't know the difference, but I always used to call it inking, and then as time went on, people were kind of looking at me going like, what are you talking about, inking? So I've tried to stop using that term. And then we get into contrast paints. I've had a couple of goes with contrast paints, and I spoke about them last week because I used one for the yellow on my Tyranids, like the general colour of their flesh. I started painting them with this colour, which is a Vallejo colour. This is one of their brush colours. They do them in a airbrush colour as well. They're identical. They're just, this one here is just has a milkier complexion to it, so it goes through the airbrush smoother. So I naturally started painting them with these because they're the paints that I had to hand. But then I thought, oh, contrast paints came out, I'll give those a try. And I tried it on one of these spore mines, and it went on beautifully, and the colour was wonderful. Now, there's a lot of talk saying that they originally were sold so that people could have a colour, slap it on, have a battle-ready army without really thinking much about it, kind of getting them out there and done. So you've got coloured models on the table, which is basically the aim of this whole show. But of course, I'd already painted a good portion of my army, and these were so different that I decided not to go with it, even though it probably was a better idea. But I was doing some flesh colours a little while ago, and someone said, hey, paint your flesh skin white, and then put a little bit of this on there. A lot of advice later, they say, don't slap it on. Control where it's going to go. If you slap it on, you're still going to get all those hazardous kind of tide marks and features, and it's just not going to look as natural as you want it to. But this was a game changer. I'll pull up the little head that I was painting. I was doing a little Space Marine Librarian a little while ago, and it's been my first proper model head that I've painted with a little bit of detail on it, and I'm really chuffed with it, and it's all because of this paint. It is, though it's kind of settled at the bottom a little bit, but you can see it in there. It's still kind of like a wash. It's almost like a glaze, and what it does is it doesn't affect the colour underneath. The colour underneath affects this one. So depending on what colour base you put underneath, be it white or a cream colour, or going more probably into these sort of sandy colours, is going to really, really affect the colour that this comes out on. So it depends on what sort of skin tones you want. For example, do you want really, really pale white, or do you want something that's more dark and white, like black skin tones? This is the colour that you want to be playing around with, especially if you're just kind of starting out. I like all my technical paints. I've got some Blood for the Blood God. I've not used this one yet. I think it is actually opened, but I've not actually used it. I'm not one of those people that's going to put blood on my Tyranids, but it's there ready to go. Now, before I actually get into doing some painting, because I do want to move on and get some done today, there is one other thing, Carl, that I wanted to show you, because you were talking last week about doing cloths and fabrics and things. Am I right?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm doing as we speak.
Cool. Now, this is a little bit of stepping into... It makes me feel like like a professional territory sort of thing, but these are oil paints. Now, oil paints are generally perceived as the more superior paint from what I understand, because the pigment is solid. Basically, you don't really have to go over, thin your paints down, come back and do a couple of more coats or whatever. These are really, really good paints, and they're sturdy. They are oil based, so you have to use spirits and things to clean your brushes and tidy up. And I used to use oil paints when I was doing all my Airfix stuff, because of course all the old Humbrol paints were all oil based. but they're kind of coming back into fashion now. It used to be that what the advantage that acrylic paints had was that their pigments were more vibrant. They had a bigger range of colours, really, so you wouldn't get all these pinks, blues, and yellows and things that I've kind of got here necessarily in an oil paint range. But now, modern world, we're actually seeing like a resurgence of oil paints coming back up. And I subscribe to various groups and pages on Facebook of like heavy metal. There's one called Heavier Metal. I encourage you, go and have a look on there. The stuff that comes out on that page is incredible, and a lot of them were talking about playing around with oil paints again. So I went down the rabbit hole on YouTube, as you always do, right? And I started.
Some of you may be here right now, in fact.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully, stay here. Don't go. There was a gentleman who was showing his viewers in a pre-recorded video how to achieve like dirty fabrics and things like that, trying to make his miniatures look really, really grim dark, essentially. And he used a mix, not a mixture, but he basically used black or burnt umber. Burnt umber I've always associated with being like the premier brown to achieve almost anything, be it mud or burnt looks or just grimy. This is the one to really go for. And what you would do is you would apply it liberally to the area that you want to do. So I would, if I was painting this little Spore Mine model, I would just coat the whole thing if that's where I wanted it. And then I would get a little sponge or a cloth or a tissue, and literally, when it's just been sat on there for a second, just wipe it off. And depending on how much you wipe off, obviously depends on how much you leave on there, and then that will give you, it's just literally just removing it gives you that grimy, dirty look, and you don't need to do anything more than that. So if you've painted your cloth, say, I don't know, like a cream color or like an ivory color, and then you smear it with the brown oil paint, wipe it off with a sponge or whatever, let it dry. Oil paints do take a very long time to dry, they always have done, but the effects look absolutely amazing. I bought those again on an impulse buy, and I've yet to try them out because I'm not doing that kind of effect on this army. I'm actually doing that on more. Well, I was going to start playing around with a Space Marine army and trying to make them look a little bit grimmer, rather than trying to make them all look like kind of pop out bright and colourful. So yeah, I'm going to get on and do a little bit of painting, I think, because last week I didn't really get to do that much. I do have here a very large portion of my whole Tyranid army. I'm going to call it my army of shame, because there is so much that still needs to be done, and I've had so much of this for such a long time. This was one of the leading factors into me starting Easy 8 Online Painting Club, was like, hey, this, everyone always says that they have stuff that they want to paint and don't get around to it, and shameful piles of unpainted models. No more, let's get on with this. So what I've got here is 20 Spore Mines, painted yellow, pink, and a little bit of grey, and I'm going to do different shades on them depending on what colour I'm going to go for. So I'm going to do, I think, sepia, the Seraphim sepia colour on the yellow. I would use Agrax shade, I would go back to it, but I've learned that the smaller a model is, the lighter your colours. I don't know if it's really going to make that much difference, but stick with what you know. So I'm going to use that on the yellow, and that will kind of dull them down, because these are very, very vibrant at the moment. Compare it to this little fella over here, which you can't see because I'm outshot again. He's very, very dull, darkened down, even though his colours are essentially brighter. These guys stand out like candy. So this will dull it down a little bit. I'm going to use Carroburg Crimson on these, which is a different attempt basically at trying to do what I did on the Tyrannofex, where I used the violet before, it turned them bright purple. This is a red colour, and this is absolutely fantastic. Someone advised me to use this on Zoanthrope Brains. I've got a Zoanthrope brain here, floaty brain bug, and again I've painted the brain parts on these just off white. Apply this crimson colour on them, and it comes out like brain matter. You can wait for it to dry and go over it again, and they come out even deeper red. But if you apply it on pink, it kind of gives you that sort of tender tentacle earthworm kind of feel to it. And I was playing around with different colours, base colours throughout the week, putting them on Facebook, and everyone kind of came back to me and was like, pink, go with pink, because I was trying these three colours here. I tried dead white, bone white, and then squid pink, and they all had very different features, and they're all quite charming, but the pink won out. So, not to disappoint my viewers, I'm going to be using pink with that colour on there. But I've also got the grey colour on, and for that I do use Nuln oil. I want to kind of bring it down. They've got a lot of recesses in there which I want this to run into, generally affect the whole colour, and then I'll highlight them more later on. Hopefully they'll dry and I kind of get to do a little bit more than just that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a swig of my tea, which has kind of got a cold because I'm doing it again. I'm talking. So I've got my little palette over here.
As Danny starts to paint, is anyone painting with us this evening?
Yeah, that'd be really nice to know, actually.
I've got half a workshop of shame. And that's a pile of shame. Some more than others. You're not wrong, unfortunately.
Well, Adrian has said here, everyone has a pile of shame, some more than others. Now, I know for a fact, I did mention this last week, I know, Adrian, that you have an immense Imperial Guard army. Are we allowed to call it Imperial Guard nowadays, or do we have to call it Astra Militarum? The human army. The guys who look like Starship Troopers, right? You have an immense army and have put other collectors to shame with the amount that you have. Do you still have an army of shame? Do you still have vast quantities of miniatures unpainted, or do you just have some stuff that you're kind of working on? Or have you got it all done? Do you not even need to be here? That's what I want to know. Because you can just paint along with us. So what I've got here, I'm just using it straight out of the pot. This might be haphazardous. There might be someone out there going like, no, don't do that. But do you know what? Tell me. So I've got my little detail brush here. I would normally use a slightly bigger brush, but these are quite small models. What I want to do is, and they're slightly out of focus, and I can only apologise for that really, but these models are almost like jellyfish. So they've got this kind of like crusty fragmental feature at the top of the brain bit, if you like, and underneath is this little flappy bit of flesh, which is just kind of really weird. I really like. I read a short story. I don't know if it was an official one. I think it was years ago, where it was talking about Space Marines patrolling through a moon, and they were going through some craters, and there were some buildings and stuff nearby, and it was literally a short story about an engagement with spore mines and how they didn't know that they were coming, and they kind of just drifted out of nowhere, and they started taking people down because they just kind of get close and they explode. And it's supposed to be absolutely horrendous. You think about that for a second. Just, minding your own business, walking through your village or your town or whatever, and then these things just kind of get drifted in like jellyfish on the tide, but in the wind. It's terrifying, and I like the horror aspect of it all. I'm a big horror fan. So I'm not being too delicate with these models. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't get this crimson colour on any of the other colours. I just want it to go on the pink. So if it does go on that yellow bit there, which is that kind of space, flange is a good word to use here, flange of jellyfish skin or whatever. If it does go on there, I would just clean my brush off, dry it, and because the paint is so watery, capillary action should just draw it straight off. So yeah, this one's actually got a bit of a split just at the bottom of the tentacle, which kind of attaches it to the base, which is a bit of a shame. But I didn't want to stick any glue in there. I was going to say, Kyle, we lost you, but you're back.
Right, yeah, little technical issue, and we're back. No problem.
Cool. So that's my first one. It doesn't have to be anything special at this rate. I've got a little bit of a cat hair on it. I do have a cat. My cat is called Newt. I rescued her. She is the fluffiest thing you have ever seen, and no matter the efforts that I go through to remove that cat fur every single day, I even had to buy a special hoover for it. Her fur just gets everywhere, so you might see it in shot. If you do, hey, she's famous at least. But that's my first one. Yeah, done. So I'm just going to leave him to a side. I'm going to dry him. Now I could do, if I wanted to kind of make that colour starker, I could come back and put another layer on it when it's dried, but actually I want these to still retain quite a lot of pink. I want them to be quite light, and what I want this shade to do, this wash colour, is to just really just show the details off by running into the creases on the model, I suppose. And I am a bit cheeky, and I use washes and shades, etc., to hide a multitude of sins in my painting. I can see here where I was a bit rough. I've got shaky hands. I was a little bit rough on getting the pink and the yellow on there, and they kind of overlapped a little bit. But if I make sure that the shade is concentrated enough in that area, then it will just cover it over. I wonder if I'm the only one that does that. Probably not. I'm not a pro painter. I want to be. I used to think that I was all that, but I was young and foolish. And
I'm here right now as kind of the exact opposite. That's kind of my role here as well. I'm quite new on the whole painting path, even though I've been a part of this hobby for about 20 years. I'm pretty much just learning how to paint now. I've had a couple great tips and sessions with friends that are really good painters. One of our friends, Dave, actually has helped me out quite a couple of times. And I just made the sin every time of getting this great advice from him. He'd sit me down, almost give me a workshop. I'd be really happy with the models that I'd kind of produced with him, and then I just wouldn't do anything about it. I wouldn't go home and paint more and practice. And I was having to think about that this week, and I think it just comes from being a bit of a perfectionist. I didn't want to put the effort in to learn and have models that didn't look great. So that's kind of what I'm getting away from now, hopefully, is stopping being afraid of just having a go, putting some paint on. Does this wash work? No. Well, now I know that doesn't work.
You've got to experiment. I'm really happy that I've got this big Tyranofex model. It's a shame that it wasn't what I wanted it to be when I bought it. I suppose deep down I knew that when I was paying a small amount of money for such a big model. But it pays to have that model that I don't mind, and I can still turn it into something special at the end. That is, I put all the colours on there. I play around with it. I was doing it just this week. I'll show you some more on that a little bit later this evening. Adrian has just replied. He says, "My pile of shame is still immense and has only been added to. Slowly working my way through it, though." See, even the people who get stuff done still have more stuff to get done. So that's what we're here for, right? I have chosen not to have music playing in the background during the show. I know I have a little intermission with some music. I kind of got that off of the YouTube free music library. I'm a novice when it comes to doing YouTube videos. You probably can tell, and I will make no attempt to hide that at all. This is very raw. I like the fact that I'm transparent about it. I hope you appreciate that. Of course, if I had music playing in the background, you'd have to listen to it, and that might not be your sort of music, and it might put you off. So by all means, drown me and Kyle out if you want to. Just be happy that there's a couple of other people here painting at the same time as you are, working their way through the rummy. You can put on whatever music you like. I'm a big fan of rock, but I'm also a fan of things like classical. I'm very eclectic when it comes to my tastes in music. What I normally paint to is synthwave or dark synth, anything that kind of has like a cyberpunk feel to it. I discovered it a couple of years ago, and I just can't stop. However, there's a lot of dark synth and synthwave out there, and it's not royalty free, and this is a very humble startup, so I'm not going to kind of go investing in that. And also YouTube is laden with various risks. I just don't want this to be kind of muted on the playback and have the program pulled. But yeah, synthwave I find quite an inspiration. I can just put my headphones on, listen to synthwave, and just get stuff done. I find it really inspiring. What do you kind of listen to as a musical choice, Kyle?
Oh, again, absolutely everything. What am I into at the moment? I'm into really cheesy 90s stuff at the moment. I tend to wax and wane with what I listen to. It's something I love Spotify for. The algorithms it gives you is just phenomenal. I don't know what mathematicians they've got working for them, working all these things out.
Wizards, just wizards, mate.
Yeah, just absolute wizards. I think I listened to one song from Texas. The classic, I've forgotten the name of it now, and it put a whole playlist together for me, and that's it. I'm off. All Saints, the lot. Other bands are out there.
Are you old enough to remember Texas from the actual days?
Just,
yeah, I am.
It was those songs I was kind of brought up with. My mum. Remember my mum listening to them. It's a bit of a nostalgia hit. But yeah, I absolutely love. Too many people. I think everyone says it, and it's true. Most people like most musics, and it's just kind of how
absolutely.
I'm feeling that day. I was the same. with sort of the synth wavy kind of stuff that was quite new. Just anything really. Really depends on the mood.
Yeah. I try to stay away from music with lyrics and things in because I find them distracting. So I'll be kind of working away, doing whatever I'm doing, painting or anything else, and I'm singing along, and I realise that actually my progress is stopping. I actually identified that as a problem quite early on, and now I try to not listen to music, and then I end up searching for my favourite songs. And then you end up kind of losing yourself in playlists, and it just becomes a bit of an excuse, a subconscious excuse. So now I just kind of put on like cyberpunk music, I put on synthwave. Of course, synthwave is a genre of music that is based around music from sort of 80s to 90s, of all the old sort of Miami Vice kind of films. There's a lot of Terminator references and things. And that kind of just plays into what you're saying, Kyle, is like the nostalgia of movies. I find it really inspiring. And of course, you and I have played various roleplay games as well, and that music has been music itself has been a source of inspiration for storylines. So it's amazing what the power of sound or music can actually do for you. I rate it.
One of the big ones I always go back to for music, if you think of things like, if I would say like Creedence Clearwater Revival, it puts film straight in your head, straight away. 100%.
Yeah.
I think Ricky Gervais said it best when he said Vietnam had the best soundtrack to a war.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without
I know exactly what statement you're talking about, and it might be a part of a comedy show, but it is right.
It's still
it really is. And I know that people's taste in music can be quite a contentious and provoking subject to talk about, but actually if it's what you're into, it's what you're into, and I'm not going to hold that against you at all. Like, if you like one type of music that I don't, and that's cool. It brings the variety to it, doesn't it?
I was actually introduced to Creedence when I was living in the outback in Australia, and I was in a truck. A mate lent me his truck the whole time I was out there. I felt like a full, they call them bogans. Sorry for any bogans listening if you don't like the term. It's the redneck version of an Australian, and I absolutely loved it. I embraced it. It means I wore a vest everywhere. I rode around in my truck and I blared Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I absolutely loved it.
I know.
Since then,
I'm a big Creedence fan myself, because I was brought up with that sort of style of music, because when I was younger it was just me and my old man up until the age of 15, and I know that he's watching right now, and I know that without even looking up, I know that he has responded. He has, hasn't he?
He has.
Yes. yeah, there you go. So we got some Creedence fans here today. Let us know, type in the comments what music you're listening to, if at all, if you are listening to anything. Maybe you like peace and quiet. Maybe these sorts of evenings where you kind of just come online is your opportunity for a bit of peace and quiet away from the family or the other people that live in your house. I know for me, for example, down here is actually a bit of peace and quiet for everybody else. I know right now that upstairs my housemates are watching some telly. My partner was doing the dishes earlier and is probably quite grateful for me to get out of the room. And I do take up a lot of space with all this. I had a bit of a turnout just before we started to go live because I was going to bring some other models in to do today, and I bloody lost them. But I found them about 10 minutes before we went live. So upstairs is a shocking state that I can only apologise to everybody for. This is going. Sorry, we obviously identified a blank spot in the talking there, and we both went to fill it at the same time. Please, after you, sir.
We were talking earlier this week about just some like topic starters for the hobby, and like that inspiration you get. Because one of the things I know when I am excited about learning about washes is and inks and stains is it starts to help you tie your colour palette together when you're creating it. And one of the things I've always struggled with, something I'm terrible for, is knowing what colours go with what, when to contrast, when not to, what colours to kind of put in your palette to make a model. One of the things I like most about the hobby is making my own things. I love the Blood Angels, but I prefer to make my own chapter because I want to be able to put my own spin on things. I did it with a small towel force I had. I wanted my own paint scheme. Anything like that where I can kind of make it my own. But I struggle putting colours together. And then we were talking about, well, one of the things you can do is start to look for inspiration in your favourite things, and then very quickly we got onto our favourite kind of movies, or the movies that first got us into sci-fis or fantasies. And I know you're a big Aliens man.
Oh yeah,
Aliens
anything
film.
Alien.
Funny
Yeah,
enough, as he says, painting a
yeah.
a Tyranid.
But
Yeah.
my color scheme couldn't be any further from the color scheme of that movie at all, could it? I have seen some Tyranid armies painted up like. Do I call it the guy? Now, I've always called him Geiger, but I've been told that his name's actually Giga. So if I do call him Geiger and that offends people, I can only apologise. I never ever want to pronounce someone's name wrong because it's obviously very personal. And obviously, Giga himself has such a fan base. I've seen some armies painted up in the Giga alien style, and it just looks terrific. I just think it's brilliant. I'm a massive fan of the original film, although Aliens was the first one I saw, which is obviously the sequel, the second film. There are 4. I think that 2 were worth watching. But yeah, Aliens wasn't an inspiration for me in this. I just got excited back in 98, 99 when I was playing Marines and a little bit of Guard. And I was just kind of looking through the books, and me and my old man found Tyranids. We went, oh my god, aliens! And of course, all the models were very, very different back then. And they had models that were very closely based on sort of the Giga model. Hormigaunt models, yeah. And very smartly, they kind of moved away from that design, which actually paid out for them because the models and designs they got now are just brilliant. But yeah, I used to have hundreds of them, and I just painted them any colours. My old man got involved in it as well, and we just kind of went on massive painting frenzies and just did them. And I had loads of everything. Unfortunately, my original Tyranids army was almost entirely stolen a long, long time ago. And that was a shame. And I'm not going to kind of go into that at all because it's quite a negative discussion. But they were stolen. I never got them back again. It was a lot. It wasn't just my stuff. There was somebody else's stuff that got stolen as well. It was a real shame. But it did mean that not too long around the corner in the timeline of Games Workshop events, that they actually released 3rd edition. And with 3rd edition, they had completely remodelled the Tyranids' appearance in one of the best moves I think they've ever done, and they actually kind of set out what they are, what they do, their biological design. That they've all got, they should all have like 6 limbs, and they should have like a carapace that has 5 shell pieces on it, whatever you want to call it, and then the head should have the same. And they kind of created this creature, and yeah, no, it always stayed my favourite. I like them because they're supposed to be super intelligent things, but if you want to, they can be bugs from Starship Troopers. They're just they're there because it's lunch, an intergalactic
that's exactly what I like
locust.
about films. Even if you're not taking the color scheme directly, it just gets you thinking.
Just gets the vibe.
You just start. For me, like I have more ideas than I could ever possibly put into practice with both modelling, role-play games, all those sorts of things. But just having those sources of inspiration. And nowadays, when you look at some of the TV shows that are coming out and the budgets they've got, are just fantastic.
There really is a lot of stuff coming out there at the moment, isn't there? We've got a couple of comments in. So Adrian's, but I remember singing Bad Moon Rising on karaoke with you. Yes, yeah. Adrian and I have played music together in bands and sung. Those years are long behind me in the whole karaoke thing. But yeah, I love a little bit of Bad Moon. Obviously, Bad Moon is the best song that Creedence ever did. I know Carl's going to disagree with me. I know you're yeah. Bad Moon is just, again, I was just brought up with it. Jeanette's put, I don't paint. My music taste is a bit strange and varied. I'd be too busy singing along to get anything done. Yeah, that's exactly why I don't paint to music that's got lyrics in. So I'm a big Dire Straits fan. Dire Straits is really what gets my vibe. And AC/DC, but I end up just turning it into a bit of a rock concert, and I just try to avoid it. So anything that's just kind of backgroundy music, even if you just go into like YouTube and type in like epic music, you'll get stuff that's kind of based around things like Skyrim or Lord of the Rings, anything like that. It
Mythic
could just
style.
if it could just get you going, and you can lose yourself for hours in it. What's my dad written here? So did I get those big mines I made wrong then? No, I'm glad you brought that up because they're just on the side. I'll finish painting these mines here, and I'll bring out my other mines. It doesn't matter
Wait,
really.
there's more.
Yeah, it doesn't matter really what they look like. Even Games Workshop now have kind of not moved on, maybe kind of ignored their design, I suppose, in some way. So you'll find some models that don't have the correct amount of carapacey bits, or have the same amount of limbs here and there, perhaps. But they're mines. I suppose they don't need to have limbs. These ones certainly don't. They don't have like a certain amount of carapace bits. These ones do. These ones on the front here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plates on the front of them. I don't think they're going to provide anything. They're just kind of there, and they've got these little air tubes, I suppose, because they would, I suppose, poot their way across the landscape by little puffs of air. Poot is a real word. It's not. I made it up. But obviously, it doesn't really matter as long as you're happy with what you've got on the table. It doesn't really make any difference. Of course, Kyle, you mentioned the colour wheel and inspirations and things. Obviously, earlier on this week, we were talking about inspirations for this show and this episode, and we got on talking about fabrics and stains and washes, and we started talking about the colour wheel and things. And I've known very little about the colour wheel. And I've always known it's been there, and I suppose there was that kind of student apprehension, like, I don't want to get involved in the colour wheel, that's too technical, I know colours, pink, blue, green, whatever. But actually, I started doing a little bit of research over the last few days. It's fascinating, and maybe I've just kind of got a different approach to it because I'm an adult now, I suppose. When you're a kid, sometimes you just kind of you want to rebel against some learnings. But I've learned a lot.
No, putting my foot down at the colour.
The colour wheel, amongst other things, Kyle. Amongst other things. But yeah, I suppose I didn't get it. I didn't really want to get it. I didn't really know that in some years I would be, researching it on YouTube. But I just typed in colour wheel on YouTube, and there's a whole pool of knowledge out there and people just explain it so easily. If you don't know about the colour wheel or know much about it, I really highly recommend it because it will start to open your eyes a little bit about colour choice, and that kind of ties into what Kyle was speaking about. He doesn't know what colours to choose, and as obviously a part of the discussions that I wanted to talk about today, because I really enjoy that aspect of it, is how do you choose what colours to paint everything, because there are all the different colours and sets and things that Games Workshop paint all their things from, Blood Angel Space Marines to Ultramarines, red and blue. And then in the Tyranids books, there's lots of different armies of Tyranids. They call them high fleets. So they're like different swarms, different nests, if you will, in space that kind of float through. And they've all got different aspects and traits, but they're all painted different colours. My inspiration comes from a picture that I just found just trawling for inspiration. I found a picture on Google, and it was a cute nid. And apparently cute nids is a thing where someone just draws a picture of a nid and they make it look a little bit anime, and it has like cute little eyes, and it's doing cute little things, and it was exactly the same colours that you see on the tabletop now. So it was yellow flesh, and it had this kind of light grey armour, and I remember showing it to my old man, and we both sat there and went, despite it kind of going away from the grim, dark aesthetic of the overall game, it was a really good colour. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go home. I had some green Hormagaunts that I'd badly painted some years ago, and I just kind of sprayed one down white, and I painted it up in these colours. I just chose the colours at random, really. Like I was, I'll use that yellow and I'll use that grey, and it just worked. I loved it. So that was one of these Hormagaunt models that I did here. You can actually see it in some places. You can see little dots. I'll put some photos up on the Facebook page so you can see them up closer. But there's little dots of yellow coming through. It's because these were dark green, and I did like yellow dot scales on them, and I just kind of repainted them nice and quick. Just like, do you know what? I'm just gonna kind of get over it. Yeah. and I like the way it went. And I didn't really put an awful lot of thought or investigation into different colours with these things. I just thought, yep, yellow's the colour I'm going to go with. I really like it. It had that bright colour vibrance that you see in a lot of Games Workshop armies, but it wasn't sickly. It wasn't over the top. I thought, yeah, this is really what I really want. Then 7th edition, 8th edition, 7th edition Tyranids Codex came out, and it had all their different Hive Fleet armies in there, and then there was one called Hive Fleet Jormungandr, which is quite a tongue twister, but I really liked the style that the army was based around, which was like tunneling creatures, which really kind of pays tribute to Starship Troopers, the movie, where you've got them kind of coming out from giant tunnels underground, and I liked that kind of concept. So I was like, yep, these ones are brilliant. And it just so happened to be that they were the same colours, but just in reverse. So the skin on the one in the Games Workshop books is like a really dark grey to black colour, and their armour is yellow. So I was like, well, there you go. That's my army. So I play Hive Fleet Jormungandr, and of course Jormungandr, I think I'm saying it right, Jormungandr or Jorgenmander. Jormungandr is Norse. It's one of the it's the second son of Loki. Jormungandr is the serpent, which obviously because they're supposed to be like serpents that tunnel, etc. The first son was the wolf, Fenris. I can't remember who the last one was. So yeah, it is a real word.
What I like that Games Workshop have done though is they seem to in the last few editions opened it back up that you can be a bit more creative again. So they've not been as strict with the rules. So they said, well, if you like this chapter tactic, or if you like this Tyranid Hive Fleet, you can use those traits, and you just rename them, and you make your own. You have colours, but you can use those traits. And it's just opening up that creativity again. Which I really like.
With the Space Marines, they did it. You can be like a successor chapter and have their traits and still put whatever army colours you want to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
I know they've done it with Guard as well in their 8th edition. You could just pick and choose basically and kind of make your own.
Unless it's Cadia. Unless it's Cadia. Cadia burns. Or does Cadia stand? I don't know. I actually I lost touch with the books around about that point because work and life and things. It's something I do want to pick back up again. They kind of pushed the plot back on. They felt that they've been stagnant for a while in their story, so they pushed it. They brought out the new Space Marines, which they call Primaris. There's a whole plot and story developing in there. Unfortunately, I lost touch with it a little bit. Not because I felt it boring or I didn't feel like it was going in the right direction, just literally life. And then, of course, start painting again and everything kind of piles up. We've got a couple of comments going in there now. Jeanette's put baby metal, young blood, and BMTH for me these days. BMTH. I don't know what BMTH means. I'm going to leave it open. Kyle. BMTH.
That one. That is not. Apparently, I don't like all music. Look at that. We have found some.
Well, maybe you do like it. Maybe you just don't know it. Adrian's put Cadia stands in bold capitals there. Okay, cool. He's a Cadian player.
That is one of the many ideas I had. I absolutely love the Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum Flyers. I just think they look brilliant. There's something about them. I just think they're aesthetically brilliant.
Talk about the Valkyrie and the Vulture.
Yeah, the Valkyries, the Vultures, and
they look real, don't they?
Yeah, they just look exactly what I'd expect from the Guard. I think the kits look absolutely fantastic, and I really want to do an air cavalry Guard force. Try and get like 3 flyers on the board, quite elite because that's apparently the only way I ever run an army. Lots of command squads and what do they call them now? They're not stormtroopers.
Kazakins. No, Kazakins is a Cadian thing.
Let's get them out again.
Scions.
Scions.
Scions. There we go. Yeah, you caught me off guard there. Scions.
And I actually found most people probably know about Anvil Industries is an alternative model company.
Yes, they are.
And they let you build your own regiments, and you can get some fantastic models that I just thought would really make those command squads and scions just stand out. and still look different from each other as well. It's something I'd love to go back and revisit. It'd be a desert style air cavalry force. Yes, go Scions, definitely. And just dropping that plasma and melter death all over the table, trying to actually use mobility to win games like Sun Tzu tells you should.
Oh, you read Sun Tzu as well, do you?
I don't know if you know what degree I've got, Danny, but I've read them all.
I thought that we might leave that for another day. I want to, like I say earlier on, not blow all my content potential in the first couple of episodes, but I do want to do episodes on more games, because it's not just Games Workshop. It is obviously the one that I think people really associate with the most. I think almost every gamer's either had a go or got an army currently, or all painted up or whatever. I think most people know about it at least. But there are other games. Some of the original Games Workshop developers actually went on to make Bolt Action, which is a historical Second World War game. I've not played it. I don't know if I ever will get around to it, but I do like the models. Like I was saying in last week's episode, I just love their tanks. And I'm a big fan of tanks now because I started painting them. I've always kind of known a little bit about them and had a sort of an interest in them, but when I really started researching them and kind of working out what certain parts were and what they did and what colours they were, it just opened up this whole new, like I needed a new passion, but I love them. I got
too much money.
Yeah, well, hopefully I've got too much money. It's not the case. I bleed money out because of this. But yeah, I've got reference books all over the place on like tank color schemes and designs, and I will share them. I want to kind of work through a bit of my Tyranny collection for the first couple of episodes, and then I'll open it up and we'll go into some Bolt Action. Bolt Action is not the only tank collection that I paint up. There are other games. There's games that I do play with tanks, and they're smaller games, so 15mm games. There's a game that's just called Tanks, which is great fun.
What's that about?
I don't know. Tanks, Kyle. And then there's another game which sounds a bit rude, but it's not. Oh, What a Tanker. I think it's just called What a Tanker, not Oh, What a Tanker. And it was advised to me by a friend of a friend, and it's just absolutely hilarious fun. And I'll get all those out on another day as well. I don't have too many models of them. I've got a couple waiting to be actually made, and I thought I'd do an evening where I kind of make those and paint those. And we'll kind of just change the subject a little bit from my Tyranid army in Games Workshop stuff to other games, because there is so much out there. You might not even be painting models. You might be painting, I don't know, a canvas painting. You might just want some company going along with it, and you might have some, expertise or knowledge on things like, color reference or color wheel and things like that.
I've actually just dug out some Airfix models that need making and painting, and
Airfix?
That'd be a nice something to do a bit different and get away from the Games Workshop stuff. And
yeah, I have a friend who doesn't play so much. His children and his life doesn't really give him an awful lot of time to play. But he's always got, I've got this model on the go. Oh, I've got this model on the go. Well, you don't play this game. Why do you? He's like, I just like them. I just like painting them, and I think that's
a hobby in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, we're an hour in, and about this time, I like to take a little bit of a break to refill your cuppa, go to the bathroom if you need to, stretch your legs, refocus your eyes a little bit. And I'm still just doing the first little bit of painting. It takes a long time. It's quite therapeutic. I've enjoyed it. I've still got quite a lot to go. But I'm going to clean my brush. Let's bring it back away from the workbench here a minute, Kyle. I'll bring it up to webcams here. We can see you nice and clearly. Here's Darren. I'd love to do Bolt Action. Yeah, it's from what I can see, it's a very complex game. Or very complex. It's a very involving game. It's it brings in a lot of historical elements. As well, the other game that I was talking about, this What a Tanker game, is just hilarity. Though it is based around historical fact, I'll get it all out, and I'll walk everyone through it, and maybe inspire some people to go and buy some more plastic. Kyle, show us what you've been doing. What's your progress up to this point?
Again, I'm just unfortunately just off a very bad camera, so I don't think you'll pick up detail here. But I have this evening just been working some dry brush and some shades into the cape, just trying to build up some reds and moving on to some light oranges as a highlight, as well as just basing the next bit I'm going to do, which is the robes in sort of a shabty bone, that kind of off cream.
Your shabty bone is another Citadel exclusive colour, isn't it?
Yeah, other paints available. Again, so it's nothing crazy because I'm only doing one model. I'm not doing a batch approach like you are. So I'm just doing a little bit, having a little paint, keeping an eye on the comments. I'd love to pick Adrian's brain about an air cav force. It doesn't bother me at all about it being fragile because I just love play style. And if I prefer to win in a style once every now and then.
Glass hammer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hit hard, shatter on impact. Hopefully there's enough pieces at the end, see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if not, there should be a good story in there. Maybe
and we could
yeah,
probably talk about that after a break. So anyway, go refill your cups of teas, coffees, whatever harder stuff you might be drinking. Have a little walk around. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me? It's not the worst thing to happen in the world. Oh, can we just have a quick check? Just had a comment from Jeff just saying no sound. Just how.
Hopefully, my sound has come through now. That's a bit of a shame, isn't it? That is that is the way that we go with a live broadcast. For some reason, my computer decided it didn't want to recognise my microphone. I can see that my microphone is working fine now. Hopefully that's coming through. I was just talking about, before you stopped me there, Kyle, about Community Spotlight. So the photo that I've put up is from a gentleman who Kyle and I both know. We actually used to work with him. His name is Dave Wilson. He is a member of our Facebook page, and he put this photo up not necessarily for Community Spotlight, but just for showing off his progression. So the model on the left is an Eldar Farseer, as is the one on the right. But the one on the left is one of his first models, going right back to the the sort of late 90s, and the one on the right is about 5 years old, and I think personally both of those models are absolutely breathtaking. They're astonishing. So the one on the right, yeah, people are still talking about the sound. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. Looks like it, they can. Cool, good. The model on the left is, even though it's one of Dave's first models, is just leaps and bounds ahead of even some of my finest work that I've ever done. All of those runes on the cloak are all hand painted. You can see some perfect examples of stains and washes, etc. in the helmet there. You kind of got that ivory look. And you can see there's there's that brown colour that kind of goes in, it separates the top plate to the face plate in there, and it's just been, rather than slapped all over like I was doing, it's just been kind of just placed in nice and neatly so that you can kind of pick out the definition, and I think they're absolutely amazing. Obviously, the one on the right has got a textured base, which really just kind of sets it all off. But look at the highlighting on that cloak. Can you see that, Kyle? Can you see that picture there? I know you've actually got a bit of a delay on the video, haven't you?
Yeah,
but you can see it.
Classic Dave's painting. That is.
It's an incredible painter.
I've
seen him do like scarves robes that kind of drape down the sides of the a cloak, and they're about 0.5 millimeter in width, but these little elven runes, and they're all painted freehand. I can't see them on this particular model, but just leaps and bounds ahead of something that I can do, even that earlier model there. So yeah, that's Dave Wilson's Eldar, and every single model he paints is to that standard. He's just yeah, he's a real inspiration when it comes to look what you can do. I don't know if he started off really bad or if he's a natural, but I know Dave, and yeah, he is a bit of a natural. Okay, cool. Let's come back to the webcams. So we have another missing Kyle again. I'm having a few technical difficulties today. Here we are, got him back again. So apologies if you couldn't hear me a moment ago. For some reason, my microphone just decided it wasn't going to be picked up. Everybody says that they can hear me now. Nothing really important was missed. Just me talking about Community Spotlight. If you have a model, doesn't have to be any particular game or even from a game. It could just be an Airfix model if you wanted it to be. If you wanted to show it off, whether it's something, one of your first ones that you've ever done, and we're looking for some tips, advice, or feedback, or if it's something that you are particularly proud of and you just kind of want to show it off, just drop it off onto our Facebook page on Easy 8 Online Painting Club. Just drop it in there. There's no particular album. I did try to set up albums, wasn't working. Just drop it in there. Put I'd like this to go on community feedback, community spotlight, and we'll bring it up on the next episode. If we get inundated, we'll work our way through them. At this point in the show, I'd also like to kind of devote a little bit of time, just a couple of minutes, to shouting out for anybody who has their own business. So if you've got like a little business where you make models or you do a painting service or anything like that at all, I'm quite happy to shout it out for you for free. Like, this is not a sponsored show in any way, shape or form, and I'm free to do as and what I please. So obviously within legal constraints, of course. And last week I gave a shout out to a couple that were very close to me, and I'm going to shout them out again because they're always close to me. And the first one is, of course, Purple Lion Creations, which is my father's company. He's been making models for the best part of 40 years, and he's just a very, very natural sculptor and model maker. He doesn't make a particular range of models that can be repeated. They're all bespoke and they're all custom built. And each one's built with the customer's designs and input into them, and they're absolutely phenomenal models. I'm not going to go on too long because I did quite a bit on it in the last episode. If you want to see an example of one of his things, pop back onto YouTube a little bit later on and have a look at episode 1. About this sort of time, halfway through the show, I've got one of his models on there. He's currently working on an epic build, and you can see it on the Easy 8 Facebook page. I put a poster up on it earlier on. He's building pretty much the entirety of medieval St Albans. It is enormous, and the customer is going to be absolutely delighted when he gets that one through. So if you're looking for just some inspiration or want to kind of have a little bit of eye candy, or you're looking for a bespoke model of any kind, just pop on over to Purple Lion Creations, and my dad Jeff will get chat to you and hopefully work something out for you. And the other company that I wanted to give a big shout out today is Hostile Galaxy, which is an online gamers magazine. I was approached by Ruben, who is one of the main editors of the magazine, because I'd posted up a little tutorial painting some acid pool basing. I'm not a massive tutorial person, but I kind of just I did this little thing. I was really proud of it. I showed the local community how to do it, and he caught sight of it and wanted to put it in his first ever episode. It is strictly an online magazine. It's not like a paper publication, and it's not just about war games. There's cosplayers and all sorts of things that kind of go in there. Anything where people can kind of get creative and express their love for a certain subject in something creative. And it's a really, really well laid out, very professional looking magazine, and it's just a couple of guys, and I believe Ruben's wife, that also helps in the publication of it. That's Hostile Galaxy. They've got a website and a Facebook page, and you can find links to those also on our Facebook page on Easy 8. And once this video is finished today, I will also put links, or at least information, into the chat at the bottom in the comment section, so you can see it and find your way over there. So those are the two things I wanted to chat about today. Again, if you've got your own little business or startup or whatever that you want to be mentioned, just drop it into us here and we'll mention it in one of our episodes. Cool. Let's get painting. Kyle, how are you getting on over there painting, mate?
Yeah, I'm realising I'm definitely at the beginning of my journey. It's very apparent looking at my standard, but it is a journey, so I've just got to stick with it and keep going, and there will be progression. I've got to believe. I find this
a bit odd because I've seen a couple of your models in the past, and I like one of your Blood Angels, and I thought it was really, really good. But you're saying that not so good.
I think the advantage with Blood Angels, Space Marines, are naturally quite easy to paint.
Yeah.
They are the kind of first army a lot of people go to. It's kind of what they're sold as, both their gaming style and their paint. There's nuances to it, and you can take them a lot further, but that they are a great starting kind of army. Same with painting as well as playing, and I was quite happy with that. But moving on to some of the more challenging, like beginner aspects to painting, I'm just not that great. But it's okay. Part of the process. We'll get there.
The most important thing, of course, is just to enjoy what you're doing, right? If you're not enjoying it, then maybe go golfing.
Yeah.
Find another hobby or something. Anyway, I'll bring you over to the workbench so everyone can see what I'm doing here. I am still at it with painting crimson onto the tentacles of these mines. These ones are a little bit trickier to do. I would have thought they'd have been a bit easier, but they're really long and smooth. And actually what they do is they show up a lot of the error. And what I've just experienced there is a little bit of tide marking, like from where it kind of pools. I stopped to chat and sort out my microphone issues, and it's left some marks. So what I'm going to try and do is start from the top on between two of these tentacles to kind of let it pool in there a little bit, and then just follow one tentacle all the way down, and just keep on running the brush. There we go. So what I'm not doing is allowing it to collect and pool, because when it does, the water tension kind of just leaves like a little tide mark of colour, and it'll be like a little bubble once it's dried. And though I'm after kind of organic features or textures, I don't want it to look like I was a noob with the paint. Of course, if you are a noob with paint, then feel free to explore and be happy. So I want to go back talking about inspirations for armies, etc.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Because I find it really quite a fascinating thing. How do you choose what army you're going to paint, and how do you choose what colour schemes you want to do? What's the palette? For me with these Tyranids, like I said earlier on, it was just I saw a picture and I just copied it. So how? Because you've done a couple of armies to date, haven't you? Obviously, you've done your Blood Angels. You've done a Tau army.
Yes.
And you've also had an Imperial Guard army, and that's just within 40k as well. So how you got quite a bit of experience in this, surely? How do you choose what army and colour schemes you go with?
Some of it is inspiration. I think I've had more ideas. I'm one of those people, unfortunately, that changes my army about every 3 weeks because I see something cool and I'm like, that sparked an idea. And then I'll buy a couple of units and then I'll go back to Blood Angels. And it is just inspiration. I think comes from everywhere. One that I was going to talk about, and I was going to see and ask, has anyone else watched a film, read a book, anything like that, and you've ended up taking a paint scheme from it or an idea from it? That'd be great. There's one I always wanted to do, was an Eldar force based around Tron. So lots of jet bikes, dark carapaces, glowing neon lights.
That would be something to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I just thought that would look absolutely fantastic.
I imagine once you kind of got into it as well, it'd be quite an easy army to paint
once
because
you kind of learn that glow effect.
Yeah.
It's just that's a big one for me. My Tau, again, I went with like quite a dark green, and then orange flashes, and that's where I was kind of trying to learn a little bit more about color composition.
So composition is something that I really kind of got into. I don't know if I was ever hitting it right, but when I was playing around with these models, these Tyranid models, I was obviously looking at the different yellows and greys, etc. And I just kind of landed on what I thought was appropriate. But then once I come close to finishing the first batch of models, I realised I still had the base to do, and the base was. Even though the base was like a flat grey colour, I'd only painted it. I hadn't put any kind of texture or anything like that on it, and the rim of the base was still black, and it looked really off-putting. It didn't kind of sell the whole thing, and it was at that point that I realised that the base is really important. The colours that you choose, the landscape, if you're including landscape into it, are all really important, because with a model, especially a bigger one, say, like a commander or something like that, you've got a bit more space and a bit more, you're drawing more eyes to that one over like standard trooper in a unit. Is you want to tell a story. What story is it that you're trying to sell? So if it's something that you're particularly passionate about, like Kyle is with his Blood Angels, then you might have something. It might be like a particular unit or a company of Space Marines that you're following. With the Space Marines that I that I have done are the Raptors Space Marines. They are not one of the standard Games Workshop units. They are more of a Forge World thing, and they featured very heavily in the Taros campaign, which also featured the Tau. It was about fighting the Tau, and the Raptors kind of not saved the day, but they certainly pulled the Imperium out of a losing battle. I just love the colour schemes. I just saw them in a book, and I was like, wow, I really like these. Playing around with camo colours, and I just copied their kind of story from the tower. So I just kind of did them a desert theme. They got jungle camo, but they were deployed in the desert, so I just kind of put sandy bases on them. Looking back on it, I think that's actually a bit of a cop-out, a bit of a lazy basing attitude, and it didn't tell a story. And someone pointed out to me one day, I was like, you're right. So when it came to redoing these Tyranid models, I was like, right, I'm gonna try and tell a story with them. And I'll show off a couple of bits and pieces in a minute. But I thought Tyranids are a locust. As such, they literally come to a planet. They want to absorb everything that's organic so that they can just bring it up into a giant soup, and then they become bigger essentially, and then move on. And that's all they do. You can't really stop them. You can sort of slow them down. So even if I lose a battle, in my head, I'm like, yeah, you might have won the battle, but I win the war because the war's ongoing. So I thought to myself, well, how do you base that? I want to be able to kind of show that sort of story topic, if you like, in my model. So I painted grey broken landscape, like mud that had had every nutrient sapped out of it. So I just did it the same grey that I did the Tyranids, and that kind of tied it in. So it kind of pulled the whole model together. So the greys on the carapaces of the Tyranids still were clearly visible, and the yellow popped out, and it kind of stood out from the from the ground. And I thought, surely that's going to be later stages of a Tyranid invasion, so that kind of suggests that they're winning. So the story that I'm telling is that you're already losing before you play the game with me. And then I started doing little features in the terrain itself, so like cracks and fissures, and that's when I got into acid pooling, because one of the features that the Tyranid army has is that it will change the landscape, and it will just rain acid and nasty chemicals and spores in the air, and after a while it will start to collect in natural puddles and pools, and the pools will start to connect and they get bigger, and then after a while the Tyranid organisms just kind of eat everything and chuck it back up and drop it into these pools, or they throw themselves into the pools, kind of sacrifice them, because they're all going back to the same place that they came from, and that is just the giant biomass in the sky. And you got these, what they call them, reclamation pools, and it basically just kind of gets sucked up through giant capillary straws, if you like. I've got a couple of models of those that I made here. I'll show those in a minute. So yeah, these pools would be, especially in the later stages of an alien invasion, I really wanted to start incorporating them, and that's when, of course, I started doing the base tutorial for acid pooling. And I've got a little bit of a progression, like a lesson that I'd learned. I can show you how I evolved my pool landscaping techniques, because there is a paint called Nurgle's Rot, I believe, which is like an acidy sort of technical colour that I thought would be really appropriate, and I started using it, and it looked all right. But after a while I realised that it wasn't really this image that I had in my head. And I'm sure you've experienced that, Kyle, where you've got something in your head, but no matter what you do, you just can't put it down.
Yeah, that's exactly what I went to Dave for help for, because he's just got this phenomenal encyclopedic knowledge of all of the colours, the Citadel range. And I turned around and went, I want to do a desert style Astra Militarum. I want the armour to look like kind of modern day British armour colour. And he went, all right, you're going to want to base that, layer that, highlight with that, just boom, boom, boom. Gave me a list. I put it down, and with maybe tweaked the next model ever so slightly and had it down perfect. I was like, fantastic.
That's what you want.
Great to have a resource like that.
Yeah, I actually went to the same guy to learn how to paint denim. I was like, do you know how to paint denim? Have you got any ideas on how you might do that? He showed me a model, instantly pulled it out of his bag. He was like this? Yes, exactly what I want to see. Thanks very much. And showed me how to do it. And he clearly showed that he was much better painter than I am, because even though I did a pretty good attempt at it, it was nowhere near the quality of that man's denim. I am just on the verge of finishing the crimson for these tentacles, which is later than I wanted, but I am there, which means I can now put these down. I can come back to my first one. I'll show the first couple here. Let me just wash out my brush. There we go. Cool. So I think it's the first one that I did today, and you can see I might go back to them later on, and if there's a little bit where it's kind of drawn away from somewhere, maybe like a little bit in here, if I point with a brush, might pin line another line in there just to kind of give it some definition. I might dry brush them. I don't think I will, because dry brushing makes things look dry, so I might just go in with a little bit of wet paint, so to speak, I suppose, and just kind of bring in some edge highlights in there. But overall, that has toned down the overall image of what these things looked like, because they were quite bright earlier on. It's done the job, and that is bring out some of the definition, tone the colours down. Happy with that. Took a little bit longer than I wanted. So what I was talking about a minute ago, I'll show you now. Let's find one of the ones, my Hormigaunt models here, that has an acid pool at the bottom. So you can see that I just painted the colour on the actual mud grey. I stained it with the Nagrax Earthshade just to kind of give it a little bit of a soilier look, I suppose. And then I just made a bit of a divot in the middle, and I just painted in there Nurgle's Rot, and it was a nice little green colour. Stood out. My lights are kind of bleeding it out a little bit, but on the playback it looks alright. And I'll put some photos up on Facebook so you can see it nice and clearly. And it just looked like it was just stepping over a puddle of acid. I'll look back at it now and go like, oh yeah, that's not really what I wanted. And I did a couple of those. And I also got one on. I've got an old school metal zone thrope, which I now use as a venom thrope, or a neurothrope, sorry, which is like a HQ choice version, and I just practiced by having like a little split in the ground. Try and bring it up close to the camera, bring my light in closer, here you go. So I did like this little split in the ground, just trying to make the most of this 40mm base. And again, I painted this green in there, but it wasn't really doing anything. I just thought, oh, it's a bit of a shame, because it's just a colour. It's not really this technical paint that I wanted it to be. I'm sure it's got its uses if you're doing like a zombie army or a Nurgle army or something like that. Which then I got playing with some airbrush colours and a little bit of medium. The Citadel range is called Lamium Medium, and I picked this up again, an impulse buy, and I started experimenting with it. It's really, I'll go into why it's really good in a moment. It's different from watering down paints, but I was able to kind of mix it in with colour paints. I used a selection of greens, about 5 different greens. I spoke about this last week. And I just started with a really dark bottle green and just worked my way up lighter and lighter around edges where something was like contacting through the water, if you like. So around the edges of the base where it would be a bit shallower, around the mud, and around the edges of this little feature sticking out the ground, this pointy finger. And I've also put a little ripper in there, which is like a little animal that just voraciously goes around and eats loads of people and things and stuff and throws themselves into the pool. And that was, in my mind, even though I may have not conveyed it ideally, like it was my first go at kind of blending colours like that, I was really happy with how that turned out. And then I had a little bit of a practice and put it up on the Facebook group, and someone really liked it. So I did a tutorial and I kind of made this one base here. So I've used some crackle paint. I love crackle paint. It's wonderful. I put some little cork rocks down, painted them all up, and then I just started layering up those colours. With Lamium Medium, you can mix this in with your colour paint, and it's like watering it down, but water works differently, and it has a tension to it, like we all know, surface tension, water tension. And what it wants to do, especially as it kind of sits and it dries, it wants to pull back in, and it will kind of pool and bead up, and it will leave you with a tide mark. So if I was to kind of pull it here, it would leave like a little ring where that bubble of colour had sat. Lamium Medium is basically paint without pigment in it. And by applying more of it to it, then you're just kind of watering it down. And you can, I literally just popped a blob of paint on here and then popped a blob of this on it as well and mixed the two together. And then you can play with them on the palette, and it's just really good fun to experiment and play around with. And I just blended and blended and blended, and I don't know if my camera really kind of shows it off here, but it looks kind of really cloudy, like there's depth to it, and I just over layers and layers and layers just put more gloss paint on the top and made it look shiny. It's not the best water effect in the world or liquid effect, but for a 40mm base, I was dead chuffed with it. So in time, I'm going to go back over my little Hornbill gaunts that I've got here and my snaky zoanthrope, and I'm going to go back over them all and kind of apply this in the small sizes to their bases, because again, this is in stark relief to this kind of grey colour. You've got the really bright greys, and then you've got these really bright, vibrant greens. They kind of the contrast of them together is like the yellows to the greys on the actual nids themselves. And I tell that story through it, which is, we're winning even though I might be losing the game, and we're gonna eat you and your whole planet. So yeah, that's Lamy and medium. Works better than watering things down. Watering things down has its place. On this particular model here, the Tyrannofex has got this really big gun. All their guns are biological, and it has this kind of, like, I suppose, putrid sac that would feed the ammunition into this giant gun. And a lot of models have these. I've got one on this particular model here, has some pipes, etc., kind of going into it. And I wanted to make those look quite... There's a big sac hanging down here, like kind of gross and biological, organic. And I wanted to keep the tone of it similar to the yellow. I didn't want it to stand out like a vibrant colour, but I wanted to make it look nasty, and I wanted to make it look toxic, are the best words that I could think of. And I got this kind of colour down, and I was still never really happy with it, and I was struggling to get some sleep a couple of nights ago, and I actually came up with a colour scheme that I'm really quite pleased with. This needs a little bit more work on it, but this is like a dead flesh colour, so if you're a Nurgle fan, this is probably playing into your field a little bit. And then I used literally some dark bottle green, mixed it down with Lamy and medium, and then applied it, and it stayed where I wanted it to. And I'm going to apply watered down bottle green, and I'm just going to put it in some of these recesses just to kind of add more depth and definition, and just do what I'm kind of saying, like that detail work by kind of pin lining it in, if you like, just to bring it out a little bit more. And then I might apply random patches of gloss here and there to make it look a little bit wet, because it's biological and gross and dirt. Yuck. So yeah, Lamy and medium, definitely worth picking up. You can get mediums from other companies other than Citadel, but Lamy and medium might be the easiest one to find on a pinch. It's definitely worth investing in and having a play around with. So yeah, have you ever used medium?
I am. No, I'm quite far off that. I'm still learning how to dry brush. But it's definitely something that, basing is something I need to focus on as well, because it really can make a difference on a model when you see good basing. So it is something I want to look at, and those mediums are great for those effects. I know a good friend of mine actually used the mediums for some of his colour blending, some of his marines, and it looked really good.
Like wet blending is something that I really want to kind of get into. It's actually a request that I had on this channel, was like, hey, can we talk about wet blending? Sure, I'd love to. I don't know an awful lot about it, so it's not going to be that kind of tutorial watch and learn sort of thing that you might be hoping for, but I'm more than happy to have a go. It might be something that would
learn alongside kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about palettes and wet palettes and things in the next episode anyway. I've got a wet palette, I've had a couple of goes on it, and I kind of want to explore that. So hopefully next week we can talk about blending, etc. Another feature that I did on the bases, on some of them, and I was very careful not to do it to all of them, like the acid pools, and I was really happy with how this turned out, was I just did this kind of random weed sort of feature, the red weed on a few of the bases. There's one here, here's another random one, and I just wanted it to look a little bit odd. Again, a stark colour that stands out from everything else, but it's not too much going on, it's not busy, so it doesn't kind of take your attention away. I am an absolute fanatic for H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. I don't know why. I've just been obsessed with the story since I was a kid, and I know the book off by heart. I just think it's a brilliant concept of a story, and the guy was ahead of his time, really was. But obviously, if you are a fan of that story, then you will know about the red weed, which is just like an organism that follows the Martians wherever they go, and it's the reason for, in the book at least, for turning the planet Mars red. Wherever the Martians go, in a few days, this weed voraciously just consumes everything. Doesn't consume, but it just kind of climbs over everything. And that was just kind of my I wanted to include it in my models because of the alien thing that they are. So I just got a little bit of modelling putty and I made some little sausages out of them. Some of them are thicker than others, and some of them are thinner than others, and I've got a few of them dotted around. Some of them are a little bit more apocalyptic than others, like kind of all over the place, and some are quite subtle. And this one here's like a pretzel, and this one here is a bit all over the place, and I just liked it. There's no need for it to be there, no reason for it to be there. And on bigger models, say with the Tyrannothex, etc., where I can, on a much larger base, I can go more into telling that story by perhaps having like a piece of a building or something like that, or a pillar or something, and I can start wrapping it all up. Maybe I can have a body on the floor that's being, kind of bound up by this ivy-like feature. So yeah, that was just, I used some Procreate, which is a 2-part epoxy resin, like green stuff. I'm not very skilled at sculpting, but it was good fun. So I am now gonna try and start doing some browns on these bad boys, I think. Excuse me, like I said earlier on, I've got a couple of browns. I've got my Agrax Earthshade here, and I've got Sepia. So I'm going to use the sepia because I think I prefer it. And I'm just going to go over the yellows. I'm going to be a little bit more haphazard with this. I'm just going to give it a bit of a shake in case there's a pigment settling at the bottom. I'm looking forward to getting these done because obviously I didn't get an awful lot done in the last episode. I feel like I haven't done an awful lot this episode. But as a result of this show, I have been working through my collection throughout the week, and I have found, even if it's just been 10-15 minutes every day, I've kind of come in, did a little bit of yellow, did a little bit of pink. So do you know what? The show's doing what we wanted it to do, and that is to get people out there painting the models that they have neglected for so long, I suppose. So again, with this, I'm going to go straight out of the bottle. I don't know if that's a bad thing, if it's generally like bad form, but I'm going to try and not get it on the other colours. So I've got obviously the grey of that carapace there, and I've got the pink on the tentacles. I certainly don't want to go too far around the pink because obviously I've just spent all that time painting it. So I'm still trying to almost glaze by affecting the colour yellow underneath. I'm going to try and dull it down a little bit. But I'm trying to focus on, like on these little tubes, which I assume are locomotion tubes.
I feel like you've just made that up. Locomotion tubes.
It's a Kylie song, isn't it?
Something like that.
Yeah. Little tubes for locomotion. Just farts along, perhaps, across the battlefield.
Just a little. Sorry, I just remembered a little side note. I'm actually one of the big reasons I got motivated back into painting is my Blood Angel force. I'm wanting to put a good looking force on the table, but I'm building up to my captain model. This is what all the high elves, believe it or not, there is a plan in the madness, is to practice on these high elves, just my basic skills to get back onto my Blood Angels, paint some Blood Angels, so I'm happy with my kind of technique. And then I've got a captain that I'm currently building just through bits, sort of kit bashing a captain together, a good old, as they were known in 8th edition, the Slam captains, Slam Magus captains, and I'm just kind of slowly putting the bits together just off eBay or bit sites looking for specific parts. But it's one of the things I really enjoy in the hobby is making my own characters as well. Like, I like to customize and make my character models, which is kind of what I'm slowly building up to. So hopefully at some point I'll be able to show you the model when it's made and then painted eventually as well.
That'd be really exciting. Do you have like a time frame that you want to try and achieve that in?
No, not at all, because my commitments at the moment are, as you know, all over the place as well. So I'm just happy to just poodle along, and I just want to enjoy the hobby. Like, I want to start to instill enjoying painting. Like, I've never enjoyed painting. It was why I've had so many grey armies. So this is what this is about. Yeah.
Be quite interested to see how many people actually do enjoy or not enjoy the whole painting process. I know people that really enjoy the painting, and I know people that really enjoy the making, but they hate the other. So where one like really enjoys making stuff, it really doesn't enjoy the painting. And I think that you should. I think you should try and get something out of it. And for me, obviously there's a learning curve that kind of goes in with it, but it's just nice to put all this time and effort in and have something that looks just really good on the table. I know that for the most part, things like these spore mines are probably not going to last as long as you have invested the time in painting them. I get that, but this is what I enjoy. Why do we play war games, Kyle? This is something I wanted to talk about last week, but didn't really kind of get into it. What is the fascination with a war game? Why do we play games of war?
Oh, I mean, that's you could end up taking that question so deep into the human psyche and need for competition.
I was trying to explain the hobby of the war game to someone a little while ago who doesn't play it, appreciates it. They weren't like, well, what are you doing that for? Which I do here, but what, each their own, I suppose. But exactly. that was my only argument was each their own. Arnold J. Rimmer in Red Dwarf says it's about leadership. I wonder how much of there is to be had in that. How much truth there is in that. Is it about leadership?
When I was living in Australia, you get a tax break in the military for your Warhammer.
Do you really?
If you're in the military, you can claim tax back. Please quote me if I'm wrong, if there's anyone listening out there. Someone in Games Workshop in Australia told me that the Australian military forces can claim their tax back.
That's really good to know. There you are, potentially helping people out. But I'd be interested to know.
For me, it was the books I've always been drawn to, the fantasy and sci-fi books, and this just seems like an outlet to that. And if you think about most fantasy and sci-fis, there tends to be some sort of aspect of war going on.
Yes, there is, yeah.
And for me, it was that kind of creativity and overactive imagination that kind of took me to this.
Yeah, no, I get that. That's for me playing this game. I didn't play any war games before this one. I just painted the models, whereas I just found it fun as a kid to paint models, and my friends were playing it, and they were like, "Oh, why don't you do it?" I was like, "Oh, no, it's not really for me, I don't think." And then my dad bought me some Space Marines, and I started painting them, and then I painted a few more, and then my friends were like, "Come along and paint." We had like an after-school club, and we went and played the game. And I don't think I ever played the game properly for years, and I never really knew the rules. I just had fun going along and doing it. But there's a competitiveness to it, which I suppose is kind of, in everybody to be competitive. But I like you're saying, the story that comes out of a game. I remember so many games of ones where I performed bad or well because of the narrative that was kind of being created, whether it was silly or kind of serious. It doesn't matter. But I still talk about games that I had 10 years ago and the certain things. I mentioned this briefly in the last episode, which was I have a Space Marine with a piece of blue tack under his base because he was solely the cause for me winning this game. And I was fighting against the Tau, who had this gun line just drawn against him, and he just hid behind this piece of cover, this little piece of pillar that was just providing with a little bit extra than he normally would get from his armor. And he kept on, his morale kept on breaking, so he kept on leaving the position. But Space Marines aren't afraid of anything, so they instantly rally the moment they leave, and they came back, and they did that about 4 or 5 times. And it was the position that we were fighting for, the strategic position, was the game-changing moment. I'd either draw with my opponent for the points if I didn't have it, or if I held it, I would win. So obviously my Tau opponent was trying to not let me walk away with the victory. But I managed just because of this one Space Marine dude. And it was just the stories and the discussions that came with me and my friends after that. And I still got him marked down, with this piece of blue tack to remember it by. It was brilliant. So all the stories that kind of come out of it. I'm a tactile player as well. When I'm moving my things around on the table, I talk with my little people because I'm a child. I'll do what I want. I don't care. And when I move my little tanks around, I make driving noises, and I like to make shooting sounds when I'm shooting at people as well. But that's just me. I am a 39-year-old child. It'd be interesting.
About this. Some of the games I remember playing in school when I was in secondary school, and I was really getting into the hobby. I played a lot of Wartime. I can remember something for almost every game of Wartime I've ever played, and I couldn't tell you if I won or lost a single game.
Because it's not about the winning or losing, is it? It's really not. I mean, maybe
especially those smaller games. I just find are so character. I felt that in our recent Necromunda campaign we played.
Yes.
It was more that it is much more about the narrative. And once I got out of that, don't worry as much about winning or losing, which I found hard with the Vansar. I found them a touch, and that was my own fault. Not realising actually how powerful some of those weapons are. Apparently taking an anti-tank weapon in a gang fight is quite powerful.
It really was quite a game changer, that one gun you had. We spoke about this in the previous episode as well, is actually that was a really interesting game because we played that where we worked together. Obviously we don't work there anymore because of the times, but it was an activity centre where a lot of cool people came together to do their cool activities and teach people to do cool stuff, and there wasn't really the kind of vibe to play nerdy games, but we started playing, we put it out there, and actually the reception was really quite large. The amount of people that came along just to watch, and I was really quite humbled by that whole experience. There was all these cool elite surfer types or whatever, and everyone just came along, even if they weren't going to play, just to see how it was going and who was doing well, and to see Kyle win again, because that became a bit of a thing. Yeah, it was a great experience. I like Necromunda, always have. Really. I like what they've done with it recently. They've changed it.
You have for a more time release. That was always my favourite.
Yeah, again, I never really got into the whole fantasy style of it. I really enjoy all of the rich lore and story that kind of comes with it. But I suppose for me, even now, it's a complete makeover in the fact that when it comes to terrain, you've got to get a whole new set of terrain because it's two totally different settings. So one's fantasy and the other one's like rich sci-fi. And when you live in a house with 4 other people, there's a certain amount of real estate that comes along with how much space you occupy in storage. If I had a place to myself, or I had a large garage or something like that, perhaps I would leave my car parked outside and store all my miniatures and their terrain indoors.
It'd probably be financially more sensible storing miniatures indoors than a car, I think.
Such fun. I like the smaller games as well. I come from the original times of, I say the original times, I don't come from Rogue Trader, which I know a few of our viewers do. I do come from second editions when I started, so back in sort of mid-90s, early to mid-90s, when the game was predominantly a skirmish game. So it was about taking a few smaller units with the centerpiece of being a dreadnought, so like a robot walker or a vehicle like a tank or something like that. And those games could still take 5 hours, maybe even longer depending on what you took. You still could take more if you wanted to. And I like that skirmish kind of style to it. And then over the years they brought in larger games. What I like with the 40k universe now is that you can play whatever you want. You can play an apocalypse game, you just play an apocalypse game, you just bring more miniatures to it. You want to play a skirmish game, yeah, that's fine. You can do what you want. And I really like that. You as your player and as your group, you just tailor the game to how you enjoy it. I think that's really important. I mean, it's really, really clever move and very, very simple.
They seem to be making that move under the new CEO, don't they? That they are going.
Yeah,
back.
I don't know his name.
Another one we got to play.
Sorry.
And I've always Blood Bowl. We had a little Blood Bowl league, didn't we? A few years
Blood Bowl
ago.
was good fun.
Stuff like that. The new season 2's out of Blood Bowl. A whole new set of releases at the moment. And that was a game I absolutely loved. And that's a game I played as a kid as well.
I always played it with other people when they had the game, so I never invested in the models or anything myself, but I know quite a few people who've had the game and various armies and things. So yeah, I've always been a big fan of the orcs because I just like the idea of take you a long time to even know that there's a ball in play. What I really like about that game, is that they obviously keep all the armies or the races that you can play in the fantasy setting, so elves, humans, trolls, orcs, goblins, whatever you want, and they throw all of the plot line in the bin and then play football. I just thought that was quite a bold move, and I remember taking some time to come to terms with that as a player and being like, what is this? Like, you pick up the ball and punch the other guy in the face. Okay, cool, brilliant. So yeah, orcs. You saying you went the other way?
Yep, I was Wood Elves. Every time I've ever played, I've always been some sort of elf nation, normally Wood Elf. No punching involved. All about racking up that high score. And avoiding contact at all costs.
Yeah, see now the opponent who I played regularly was High Elves, who pretty much did a similar thing, which was grab the ball, run, try to avoid being hit. Because if I did hit him as an orc, it probably would spell the end. I don't think I ever won a game. But you set your own goals, right, as a player, and that was if I could take one of them down, then that was ideal. Like, did you know there's a ball to play down? No.
And
No,
again, what's great about Blood Bowl is not meant to be a standalone. It is a league, and you see those tougher opponents just grinding you down in the league. Cause
yeah.
A High Elf loses a couple of people. They're so expensive.
That was it. It was. I remember, and this is again the smaller games. You remember those stories, and that's what it's about for me. I remember that there was a catcher who, at the kickoff of the game, the elves would probably grab the ball before me because orcs aren't dexterous or that fast, and elves really are. So they would probably get it. I would fumble trying to intercept or make a tackle. He would throw the ball a huge distance to a guy who'd already cleared the line that I'd put up as in defence, catch the ball and stroll over to the touchline, and often would win like with such high scores all the time. And I remember one day I got him. and me and that opponent still talk about that sometimes today, where I was able to have a piece of gear equipment. Basically you get dealt cards at the beginning of the game if you so pay for them with your points that you built up, and I got a stiletto knife in my boot, and I caught him. As he tried to hop over my my defensive line. I caught him, tripped him over, and I stabbed him, and I killed him. But they still beat me in that game. But yeah, the victories from there on in were harder to claim for the elf player. But yeah, I don't think I ever won a game. I loved it though; it was great fun. And of course, you can play it on the video game now as well.
Yes,
which
and that's one of the things I think that's really helping the just quickly, because I know we're pretty much out of time, but helping the hobby is the amount of people now that play RPGs online, play these strat games, and there's just such a crossover that you are starting to see a lot less people going, oh, why are you playing a board game? Because they've played it almost an identical game online.
Yeah.
Such a similar... There's something just more visceral about having it in front of you. And actually, I just feel like a general getting to push troops around on the map, and I absolutely love it. I think that's something that's always...
Comes into that leadership thing again, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah, we are coming to the end of our show now, and I feel like I've still got a long way to go with these mines, but I'm making some incredible progress with them, and I'm really liking, I don't know if you can see, Kyle, the effect that this sepia tone is having on this yellow. You might be able to see it. I know that you've actually got a bit of a time delay on the video there, which is a bit of a shame, so I'm just going to hold these so you can see them. But in some places, really quite a soft tone, and then in some of the recesses, I'm getting some real definition, and it's by kind of glazing this wash and controlling it to avoid pooling and tide marks. It's just kind of softened that yellow down, and now all the colours are kind of standing out a bit. And I'm going to do the same with the grey, so I'm going to kind of blend that down with some black, and then I will ever so slightly highlight them to bring them all out. And I will keep everyone who's been watching, and yourself, Kyle, updated with my progress by posting photos on Facebook. I encourage everybody else to do the same as well. I want to know how well you're doing. So does Kyle. So does everybody else.
See some pictures going up of people painting, and eventually, once I actually finish something, I will get some painting up as well.
Sure. Let me come back to webcam so we can see. Let's have a little look at what you've done. Can you show us what you've done? I know your camera's a little bit smaller. You don't have the same setup I've got here.
So I'm working on the maid standing on some fire, as well as a red cape. I know it's not going to pop very well, but I'm on limited paints for whilst I'm learning.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know. Is that in camera?
It is there. Yeah, that's fine. I can see that.
Cool. And I've just built up some layers. I've played around a bit. I've made a few mistakes, so there's been some just going back over what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm happy. There's some of the effects that I'm looking for are starting to come out.
Good.
So it is getting there.
Perhaps next week we can talk about maybe trying to achieve some fire effects, etc. I want to try and get the wet palette out. I'd like to do a little bit of blending for the guy who contacted me during the week. So maybe fire's a really good place. I've never painted fire ever, so it'll be a really interesting learning curve. So perhaps I can do something with that there. I've enjoyed myself. I've had a great time. I've actually got a lot of painting done. So again, another success for this show. I've had a great time. Kyle, I hope you're feeling much better than you have been throughout the week. And I will be back next week, next Friday, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. GMT. And hopefully Kyle will also be with us here as well. Looking forward to next week.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hopefully have some people painting alongside.
Wonderful.
Guys.
Okay, guys. Well, nice to be painting alongside you. Until next week, take care, be safe, keep on painting. See you next time.